I wouldn't, oh crap, we blew the breaker. You know why this computer costs $20,000? Because it was from the bulk aisle, and they charge by the pound there. Just kidding. It all comes down to performance. This video is sponsored by VRLA Tech, and they're having us take a look at a top tier specimen from their Threadripper Pro workstation lineup. Oh my gosh, this thing is heavy. Oh no, my laptop. You've seen the Fractal Define 7XL before. I think last time around we put about 20 hard drives in it. But if you don't fill it up with hard drives, it can fit all kinds of other cool things. Optional solid top panel. Will not be needing that with the kind of hardware we've got stuffed in here. Extra hard drive sleds. Let's take a look at the accessories VRLA Tech includes. Case screws. This is just all the accessories that would have been included in the box for the enthusiast grade parts that they're using, but instead they consolidated. This is a lot of PCI slot covers. Second bag has all the power cables that we're going to need for our power supply in the event that we want to plug it into the wall or wish to upgrade the machine in the future. Not that there's anything to upgrade it to today, since it's already the absolute freaking top of the line. Oh, till the wheels fall off your trailer. Man, the Define 7XL feels like kind of a relic of a bygone era. You know, who wants a mini ITX small form factor machine? The bigger the computer, the better. In this case, that does actually appear to be true. Oh. The bottom of the case is one gigantic removable mesh air filter. So that's where a ton of our air intake is gonna come from, but just that, not gonna be enough for the... There goes my back panel. They appear to have experienced some shipping damage. Oh, yeah, there's no windowed side panel or anything, hey? This is all professional all the times. I'm not getting derailed though. I want to still talk about the outside, where at the front we're gonna find, ooh, I like this, 4 of Noctua's NFA12 fans. That's gonna be some airflow. Oh, and on the top we got another 4 of them. That's over $200 US in fans alone. It's full of bubbles. This is actually more necessary than you'd probably think. Remember that thing that just happened where this thing probably got kicked around by the courier and one of the little plastic clips managed to break off? This prevents anything like that from happening inside so that you can at least still run the machine while you wait for VRLA Tech to get you sorted out with a replacement little plastic clip. What it means though is that it is très important that you pull all of this stuff out before you actually try to run the system. It looks like this particular piece needs to be removed from the back. Definitely be careful pulling this boy out, because if it gets caught on a cable, like a SATA cable or something like that, it could conceivably rip it off. But it looks like ours came out without anything eventful happening. I do think this system got an extremely rough ride though. You can actually see this cable right here is coming out at a bit of a strange angle from that hard drive. It's not broken or anything, it just bent a little bit. That seems to be the worst of it though. Everything is strapped down nice and tight, held in place so it can't really come loose from its connector and shipping. And it's nice to see that even though there's no window on the case, they're still taking the time to cable manage it properly. And that's one of the reasons that that's so important, especially for a pre-built system that's going to be shipped, you know, halfway across the continent. Brandon helpfully pointed out that the machine's not as much of a looker as you might expect. You got your brown Noctua fans, you got your no case window, no RGB to speak of. And my retort to that is, sometimes it's not about the looks. Sometimes it's about the raw power. That looks good to me. We've got dual Founders Edition RTX 3090 Ti's in here. That's right, the 3090 and the 3090 Ti both still support NVLink, which means that technically you could use them in SLI and games, but realistically what you're doing is you're using these bad boys for compute. And the NVLink connection between them, which you can see right here, enables high-speed communication between the cards that actually allows them to share the frame buffer, share the video memory between the two cards to work on larger data sets. It's a lot of compute. Honestly though, I think the motherboard I/O might be as impressive as the GPU compute. We have a whopping 8 USB 3 10 gigabit per second ports. Oh, sorry, that's all the Type A ones. We have another Type C 10 gig port and a Type-C 20 gigabit per second port. We've got Wi-Fi 6 on board, as well as 7.1 audio. Does anyone still hook up like surround sound analog speakers to their computer? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Should they even bother to include these ports anymore? And I really love this. Dual 10 gigabit network ports on this thing? What a beast. I guess it stands to reason this motherboard has all the bells and whistles at $999 US. This is the Pro WS WRX 80E Sage Wi-Fi SE. Whew! It's got a whopping 3 M.2 slots on it at PCIe Gen 4 speeds and can support additional NVMe storage devices, or really anything else, via its total of 7 PCI Express Gen 4 16X slots. It features one of the most oversized cooling solutions I have ever seen on a motherboard, and it is chock full of other professional features, like the whopping 3 PCIe auxiliary power inputs and support for IPMI remote management. So you can actually remote into this machine even when it is fully powered down, update the BIOS, do anything to it completely remotely. We've got a whopping 256 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 megatransfer per second memory in here. The only thing more wild than that is the fact that that's only about 1/8 of the total memory that this platform can support. And then for cooling, this is a bit of a surprise, but VRLA Tech has gone with the NHU14 Threadripper edition. Actually, I guess that's not that surprising because Noctua doesn't make a Threadripper version of their NHD14 or NHD15. So I guess we'll find out very shortly if this is going to be enough airflow to keep this 64-core Threadripper Pro 5995WX cool. Enough teasing, are we ready to fire it up? There's a peel on the front! Oh, I missed it. Sorry. One of the things contributing to how heavy this is the 1600 watt power supply, which, I mean, I can see why they did that, because if you're ever gonna upgrade these 3090 Ti's, you will need it. I know, the N word, right? You will actually need it for the F word, future-proofing. And then the other big contributor is the fact that it's got a bunch of mechanical hard drives in it in addition to its M.2 storage devices. So we've got a whopping 3 by 18 terabyte hard drives in here. So you can store all your workstation stuff on the system, or you can use those dual 10 gigabit network connections to store it elsewhere. Fun fact, if you're in North America, you will need an entire dedicated 120 volt, 15 amp breaker for just this workstation and the peripherals you have hooked up to it. Moment of truth. Considering the rough ride it got, there's no guarantee that this is gonna fire up first try. Okay, that's all good so far. Man, it turns out when you've got enough of them, even Noctua fans can make some noise. Oh boy. Are you gonna go? Yes. Let's just make sure everything's showing up okay here. 64 cores. All right, there's our 4 terabyte FireCuda 530s for a total of 8 terabytes of PCIe Gen 4 storage, 16 PCIe Gen 4 bandwidth to all of those slots. Absolutely wild. I guess we're just gonna boot into Windows to find if those hard drives made it. I hear them clicking, so it should be okay. We had an issue booting it up the first time, but I think I've solved it. Some of these workstation or server boards, I guess is where they would inherit it from, actually number the PCIe slots 1 to 7 from the bottom. So I asked Jake, our producer, to plug the monitor into the top card, thinking that would be the primary slot, when in fact it would be the bottom card that would be in the primary slot. And I think we're gonna boot up just fine now. Oh! Well, this is some useful feedback for VRLA Tech. What they've done is they've tied all these cables at the back together, which can actually create a large mass that can move around in shipping, putting more strain than you would expect on the connectors that are attached to that big massive cable. And you can see our primary card had its power connector slip out. Whoopsie daisies. There we go. Disparate. I think a reseat of our GPUs might be in order here, and the glass half full angle on that is at least it gives me an excuse to talk about the LTT ratcheting screwdriver. which as you guys can see, I'm using to remove these thumb screws without accidentally dropping them. Got it all sorted. There can be issues with auto-negotiating PCIe link speeds on some AMD systems. Looks like we ran into that, but by manually setting both of our GPUs to PCIe Gen 4, success! Everything looks good. Oh my word. The question now becomes, what can we do with this? I mean, we can game. Cyberpunk wouldn't launch. According to CD Projekt Red's website, the most common reason for that is not meeting the minimum required spec. I suspect that wasn't the issue today. In any case, we're gonna play Doom Eternal instead. I think it's probably been over a year since I've used SLI. To be clear, nobody recommends that on a gaming machine anymore. I mean, not even VRLA Tech. Like, they have a lineup of gaming machines. I'm sure that they pretty much universally do not have SLI, but they can't stop me from using it for gaming, so. You know, the micro stuttering here is not bad. You know why? Because it's only using one of the GPUs. Love it. But it's running great, 175, 200 FPS. I don't know if I've ever seen it this smooth on Ultra Nightmare settings at 4K. And I am, of course, recording at the same time, effortlessly. At least that's something the second GPU can do. Wow. The GPU that's actually being used topped out at just 74 degrees. Our CPU never went over 55, 56. Fans, they work. All right, let's try and find something that will actually use both of our GPUs and our CPU though. All right, here we go, CPU multi-core, and done. Not bad. 67,000 points. My God, it completes this benchmark so fast that it gets a short cooling cycle in between actually being utilized. It ain't the quietest machine in the world, but you can't fault the cooling performance. We've settled in at around 66 degrees Celsius max on the CPU. Of course, this is without the GPUs blowing hot air at it. So I've got an idea for how we can hit it a little harder. We're gonna go into our Cinebench preferences, and we are going to use only 96 of our CPU threads. That's out of 128. We're gonna go ahead and start that. Then we're gonna go into Blender. I've already disabled our CPU, so see, it's done. Set it to 10,000 samples, and we're gonna hit both of our GPUs with peak hardness and see what happens. 10,000 samples. Okay, let's try that again. Hello? There we go. 94% CPU usage, 96 to 97% GPU usage. Good, this still actually has some time remaining on it. Let's have a look at what our temps look like. It doesn't get any louder, so that's a plus. Definitely a cooling first design. I wouldn't, oh crap, we blew the breaker. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, one moment please. And this is why you should always use a UPS that is appropriately sized for your machine. You see this forced to install graphics I don't even have GPU drivers anymore after that crash. To be clear, this is not VRLA Tech's issue. This is just, you should not let your computer shut down suddenly in the middle of a heavy load like that. Short circuit, more like blown circuit. After a reboot, we're still having the problem, so I guess it's time for a quick tech tip. This is a little utility called DDU that anytime you're having a GPU driver issue is the first thing you want to turn to. Yes, before you contact tech support at your system integrator or whatever the case may be. Please wait. Man, if the amount of effort it takes to get a system up and running has any impact on the end result, this thing's gonna be freaking amazing. DDU. Tech tips. Display driver uninstaller. Here we go. GPU, NVIDIA, perfect. Clean and restart, highly recommended. Let's go. I didn't do anything, but I think we're back. Why? Windows search. Why? Why not the 64 one? That's what everyone on the web wants. Hey, maybe that one, you f***ing idiots. feels kind of like a spiritual dance at this point more than actual troubleshooting. Because this is on here fine. There was nothing wrong with how this was installed. Okay, sure. Do not, I repeat, do not let your computer suddenly lose power in the middle of a heavy load like that. Immediately the message comes up, I click it, and then it proceeds to not launch the NVIDIA control panel. I love it. It's almost like SLI is a dead technology no one cares about anymore. Okay, here we go. We're enabling it. Be clear, when I say dead, I mean for gaming. For other workloads, it can still be very useful. Crushing Cinebench, crushing Blender rendering, screen recording. Is there anything it can't do? How about go shopping on lttstore.com? Wow, it can do that too. Look at this guy, has a hood. Woo! Package power on that CPU just shy of 300 watts. GPU power in the neighborhood of 300 watts each. This is really not very consumer grade. I'm sure there's a consumer somewhere spending like 20 grand on a computer just because they can. Not that you're stuck with Zen 3. VRLA Tech offers 5 different workstation lineups. Ryzen Threadripper, Ryzen Threadripper Pro, and then also Intel Core and Xeon. So you can kind of pick your poison. Just depends on what you're doing. Depending on the industry, it might be better to have fewer cores that clock higher and are more cost effective, or you might actually need a ton of cores, ECC memory support, and all of that full fat workstation stuff. Sponsored or not, this is a great result for the thermals on this system. Our CPU ended up under 80 degrees, 76 to be precise, and our GPUs, the bottom one is 65 degrees with the top one, which is taking in hot air from the bottom GPU at just 75 degrees. That is very, very reasonable. And it actually didn't get any noisier thanks to the Noctua cooling fans. Pretty sick. The main reason VRLA Tech sent over a workstation was because after looking at their gaming PCs, I was kind of curious what they can do. And while $19,000 is obviously a lot of money, you can see where it went. I mean, spec it out. This hardware just is that expensive. If it's not for you, don't worry, you can check out VRLA Tech's Threadripper Pro workstations or the ones based on maybe something more reasonable like an Intel Core or regular Ryzen at the link down below. And once you're done doing that, make sure you get subscribed to ShortCircuit. So who did you guys all bet on in the big Linus versus Dennis fight? Dennis, obviously. Dennis, obviously. All right. Channel super fun, guys. Make sure you're subscribed.